Hello, everyone. My name is Aaron Christensen. Welcome to Horror 101 with Dr. AC, and this is Scare-A-Thon 2023, benefiting the Women's Reproductive Rights Assistance Project. Today, we're going to be talking about M3GAN from 2022, and to chat with me about M3GAN, I'm going to bring in my awesome panel, which consists of Dan Kiggins, Chris Scales, Gert Verbeeck, and Bryan Martinez. All right. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. Gert is beaming in from Belgium. Bryan is out in Svengoolie country of Berwyn. And we've got Dan from Chicago, and Chris is coming in from Colorado. So this is awesome. We are all over. We are covering major time zones here. I'm excited to chat about M3GAN. Let's go ahead and pass it off to Dan to start. Dan, where did you see M3GAN for the first time, or was it just for this show?
I saw it on opening weekend, and my nephew, he expressed a want to go see this, and I like to bring him to anything horror related to push on horror as far as I can. So I was delighted to bring him, and we actually had a really good time with it. I think I enjoyed it a little less than he did.
Well, I've got a local horror group that I've been going around seeing movies with for about the last 7 years, ever since I moved out to Colorado. And so this was one of the ones that ever since the trailer came out, we immediately decided we were going to go see opening weekend. So I was in there with about 7 of our horror group friends out here, and I think we all had a blast, and it was a little bit different than what we imagined, but yeah, it was great.
Let's jump over to Gert.
I was aware of M3GAN for a while already through online posters. I managed to avoid the trailers and all that because I prefer not to watch too much or know too much in advance. And then you came along with the Scare-A-Thon, Aaron, and that was for me an excuse to check it out. So I just saw it for the first time earlier this week.
Great. And Bryan?
I watched this film earlier this year, I think, like back when it was first, like, you go on Amazon Prime and then you see like the new releases or whatever. So I heard stuff about it. I'm not a huge like new horror movie kind of guy. So I usually stick to like Italian films or Demons, which is also Italian. But
there's Italian films and there's Demons.
Right. I mean, you have to make the distinction, But no, this one grabbed me, and it was like I was pleasantly surprised with the fun ride. I'm not gonna say like I'm gonna run out and buy the Steelbook special edition, ultra high definition, whatever. But it's a decent movie. It's fun, and taken at face value, it's not bad.
Well, it comes out of from producer James Wan, and the writer is the same as the one who did Malignant with him, Akela Cooper. And I think they kind of started talking about it while Malignant was being shot. But, because James Wan had done Dead Silence, like they were, and he has this creepy doll in the Saw movies, like he's kind of like the creepy doll guy. But he didn't want to direct it. And I'm so glad he passed it off to Gerard Johnstone, because I love his first film, Housebound. Such a fun ride. He's a New Zealand director, and it's just a great. So when I saw his name pop up, I don't think I knew that he was directing it, but when I saw his name pop up, I'm like, okay, I am in for this.
See, I didn't pay too much attention to this movie, where I didn't know who the makers were. So now that you tell me this, because I love me some Malignant. It had some Italian flavor to it.
Yep.
James Wan is the man, and Housebound. Like I had a lot of fun with that movie, so now it kind of bumps it up like a quarter level for me.
Like, oh, that's why I enjoyed it.
I can maybe pick up
Gert.
on that because I mentioned before that I try to avoid as much as possible. I even managed to not know who directed it, who wrote it, who produced it.
Same.
So in that regard, during the first 10 minutes already of this film, there were 3 occasions that I was thinking like, this is made by a woman. And then the second time is like, yeah, it's a woman. And the third time is like, a woman made this film. But then afterwards, I looked it up, and for me, the reason that I thought of it was like the attention to detail and the dialogues, especially during the first 10 minutes. And then I looked it up, and it turned out to be directed by Gerard Johnstone, but then written by a woman. And for me, that made total sense, not just in terms of dialogues, but the way the action was written, and then how the actors, took it up and performed it with the right subtleties. It made me think like, okay, all this must have been on paper already.
And not to mention the parent stuff too, right? Like you get a sense of that,
Yeah, and the dialogue from the opening scene, you already know. I mean, there are certain lines throughout the film that mean more than what the line is just saying. There's stuff underneath. You know that their relationship is not very good, in a good place there. And then similar things with the lead character, for instance, how she's written. But I'll leave that up to you guys.
Yeah, I know. Chris, you said that it was different than what you expected. And I think that's why I didn't maybe check it out in the theaters. So I was kind of like, okay, creepy killer doll movie, whatever. Like I didn't want to see the new Child's Play remake. I'm just kind of like, I'm good. And then people kept like, the buzz was pretty strong on this. I'm like, okay, I'll check it out. And I really did. I had a great time. I thought it's a fun ride. And the effects, like the blending between the actress wearing the M3GAN mask and the puppetry that's done, I thought, what a great combination of practical and kind of visual effects. I really dug it.
Absolutely. Side note, I got to meet the actress. She's 14 years old.
Right.
She's like a gymnast, I believe. And she loved all the attention that it got. Of course, her little dance at the end. But yeah, that was one of the things that stood out to me about this. And I was thinking just initially upon just looking at the trailer, I was like, I could see this kind of going in a Deadly Friend, Child's Play type of way, but there's something else that's kind of standing out about this, in that in those other films we get more of the robot side, and in cases like Deadly Friend, where you get kind of a little bit of that character as they're being inserted, or at least their consciousness is being inserted into a robot. But this time like you said, we've got that blend. We've got that so human at times that it's very jarring to kind of see it still do the things that it's programmed to do, but at the same time just take on consciousness all by itself. And that's a conversation I can get into on a later time. But yeah, definitely agree with that whole blending of real versus technology.
I'm curious, Dan, like it was your nephew you said you took? Who was it that came with you? Okay. So how did that play for a younger person? Like, was he scared, or did he just enjoy it?
I think it played better for an audience because they're more connected with the technology and type of stuff that they're pushing, the toys that are run off tablets and stuff like that. It's just like a newer generation Child's Play type of thing. And it's like you were talking about the newest Child's Play remake. They tried to push away from the old thing and create a new thing where he was just a new Chucky type of thing. This kind of plays into that element type of thing where it's new technology, new things, but still goes off that old scare that dolls and inanimate humans or whatever are inherently scary itself. So I think it played really well for a younger thing. I enjoyed it, but there was certain nuances that I found annoying about it also. But it definitely plays for a younger crowd. But I think it's a new thing. You know what I mean? It's a new character. It's a new Chucky. I mean, they haven't really done too many new doll things. Guess you have Annabelle or whatever, thanks James Wan and whatnot. But as a talking, moving, fully personality type of doll, there hasn't been one of those, I'd say, for a long time. I guess you could count Jigsaw, but that's just a puppet that rolled out or does whatever. This is its own thing.
Now that you mentioned Child's Play and the remake, for the record, I will say right away off the bat that M3GAN is much better than the Child's Play remake. in my
yes,
opinion.
100%.
And also for me, this is like when you talk about, like Brian said, like the new horror, the newer mainstream kind of horror. For me, the new mainstream horror just received a better upgrade with this film in terms of, in terms of it's just done more interestingly, and the topical nature is present, like in a modern way, but more underneath. You pick it up,
More subtle.
and yes, that is the subtleties again, and there's a lot of them, like little references, and also it's done sometimes in a humorous way, but not explicitly. We could go into the humor elements also, because that worked for me for once in a horror movie.
I realized also we should probably do a quick setup of, now that we're like 10 minutes into this conversation, but the basic premise is that we've got a daughter who is orphaned when her parents are killed in a car accident, and she's adopted by her aunt, who is working for this tech company, and she's been assigned to come up with the new thing, but she does this, like, she's doing a side project with it, which is M3GAN, which is this lifelike doll. And what's interesting, and I think this is kind of some fun social commentary, is that the doll is meant to replicate what it's like to interact with an actual human being. And in some ways, we see the doll like replacing the parents. It's kind of like, where the kids are given a laptop or a tablet to play with, to just kind of occupy themselves, in the same way that, some kids got parked in front of a TV. Now they just get parked in front of a different screen. But it's like this invention is even more kind of nefarious in that it's artificial intelligence, and it's learning the nuances of how this relationship works. And it learns how to say the right things to that individual person. And I was like, because I think that commentary is very much there, that we've got this single parent who didn't want to be a parent. She kind of inherited this kid. And she's like, I've got just the thing, not for just me, but for everybody out there who doesn't have enough time to spend with their kids. I was like, wow, there's some, and I agree, Gert, the fact that it's written by a woman that just really speaks to what's happening in today's world.
Also, for me, the way it's written, and if you take lead actress, what's her name again? Williams, Alison Williams.
Yeah,
I mean, the way she portrays it, she's for me, she's very believable in different ways. Like she's this fish out of water when it comes to having a kid in her home. She's a single woman, not accustomed to kids, and you can feel the uncomfortableness of it all. She's very convincing as a scientist who's absorbed by her work, to that extent that she kind of ignores she's not aware of a lot of things going on in a social manner or in a topical nature and all that. It's just well written, and the social commentary sometimes it's being discussed, and sometimes it's just present underneath, and they say or do things that make you think of it.
Yeah,
it's just integrated very well. And a final thing also with what you say about parenting, artificial intelligence taking the role over. It's part of the horror narrative also, because there was this thing that I was aware when Caddy, her behavior changes, as of after the first 30 minutes, it starts to go, she gets a bit more obnoxious, rude, more determined. And it's because M3GAN is influencing her, but we never get to see that. And it gets progressively worse every subsequent scene that she has with her mother. And that's just,
and she gets more annoying.
True. But for me, it's part of the horror aspect, because it's not really her; it's M3GAN getting more evil. I mean, that's her influence, let's say, on the little kid.
I'll also I wanted to jump on what Gert was saying earlier about these modern films. It's interesting to see, as somebody that's been watching horror movies since the 80s. And I just profess my love for demons. But like, you're seeing a lot of these newer films coming out, like, for example, Terrifier, which you guys will be talking about later this month, where it's like, at some point, the makers of these films are paying attention and they're coming out with these movies that are actually, they got some meat to them, and they're not forgettable, and they're creating these kind of new icons based off of the older ones.
Yeah.
Because, you know, like you gentlemen said, you know, this one's way better than the actual Child's Play remake. So that's speaking volumes in terms of the makers paying attention to, you know, or maybe some of these guys are from, you know, generational things where it's like they've watched these older movies and then they kind of riff off of them. So they kind of know what they're doing. But it really feels like a big middle finger to, you know, Child's Play and all that. It's almost like this studio is saying, oh yeah, you guys are doing that. Let's do this or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
So it was enjoyable in that sense, watching something brand new kind of taking flight and becoming something a little bit more, you know.
If I could, I wanted to go back to the whole thing about the, you know, the social commentary regarding parenting, and am I the only parent on this panel?
Nope.
No, Brian.
Oh,
yeah,
Brian.
well.
Okay, it's Brian
familiar
understands. Yeah, that was one of the things that I picked up, is exactly what Gert talked about, just kind of that leveling of, because, you know, I'm sure Brian can understand, you know, that whole thing about, well, how much screen time is too much for children?
Yes.
How much should we be letting them play with their toys? But another thing that I picked up on, and it was just on my recent rewatch that I picked up on it, is it really speaks a lot about our work culture. Because here we also have this woman who is, I'm going to say, is incredibly successful, but at that success, for that success, you know, the cost is she's under a lot of pressure. She doesn't have a lot of time to herself. And now you're bringing in this child into this universe, or into her universe. Mm-hmm. And while she's trying to figure out how to best parent her, and she comes up with M3GAN as sort of a, hey, I don't have the time to watch you, so this is going to replace me until I can get that time to watch you. And here, you know, in America, you know, how many of us have had to have that struggle between, hey, our child is sick, or we have a school day where, you know, we still have to work, and, you know, how are we supposed to watch our child and work at the same
Most
time?
Definitely, yeah.
And, you know, if we're late on our work or anything, you know, we could lose our job, and we can not have that place to provide for them. So I just picked up on that on this recent rewatch, and I was like, wow, this is even more social commentary on parenting than I thought.
Well, the responsibility, right? I mean, it's like you have a responsibility to your work and anybody that you're involved in the same project. But of course, you have a responsibility to parent your child. And, you know, it's like, how do you do that? You know, and as absolutely right, Chris, the higher you get being successful, you know, there's more and more demands that get put on you. It's not like you get less pressure as you climb up the corporate ladder. You get more pressure. And so the fact that she's successful makes it almost impossible to be successful as a parent.
Exactly.
100%. Yeah.
No, well, what Chris pointed out is one of those many sensitivities that are in that film. They're in there. And depending on your own social situation or your life and your work, you pick up on different things. And there's so much in this film, in like 100 minutes maximum, that it's quite amazing that they managed to make it gel together, come together so well. Even in a classical structure that kind of, I would say, winks to films like Deadly Friend, Child's Play.
Yep.
So I think they know where they're coming from, and they knew exactly what they wanted to do with this film. And
exactly. There's no fat in this film, right? Like there's like all this stuff in terms of,
and not to mention
commentary.
We're touching serious topics here, but it is an entertaining ride too.
Well, and that's just kind of my point, is that, you know, like, you've got anybody who's seen Housebound, there's commentary going on in that too. So I feel like that he was definitely the right guy for the job. But we have a great mix, just like Housebound, of horror and some humorous elements. Like the horror, I mean, let's talk about the horror first really quick, because like this creepy doll, I think that they handle that really well. And she kind of does the Chucky thing of, you know, slicing and dicing, but she also like does this crazy sequence when she's in the forest. And I don't want to necessarily spoil it for folks, but she moves in a way that we did not anticipate her moving. And I'm like, that's super fun.
That sequence reminded me of Exorcist in a way, that deleted spider walk sequence. Sorry.
Those death scenes, they appear well timed. They're not excessively gory, but they're original, well executed, and it makes them standout moments too. Aside from all the character moments that are standout.
That's one of my things about it. I wish they were gorier. Like I watched the PG-13 version, and I'm like, I understand you're trying to get people in seats, but if you're going all out, just go fucking all out with this thing. You know what I mean? Like you're riffing off of these 80s movies, which they didn't care about gore, like, you know, taming it or whatever back then. So it's like, let's just give it to us. Give us the unrated version. Give us whatever. You know?
Well, and I got the unrated version, and it's not much gorier, but there's some pretty like there's that fire hose sequence in the garden shed. Like that's a little nastier. That's a little gnarlier.
I mean, honestly, if you haven't seen the unrated versions, there's only a couple differences. Can you on this or no?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm not going to swear. They add word a bunch. When the kid spoilers, put up the spoilers. When the kid gets after he gets stretchy eared, they show a couple frames before the car hits him. The elevator kill, they show a little bit of a knife, and the aide gets blood on him. But in general, the unrated version is very tame. It's like it's maybe less than 30 seconds added footage itself. I mean, I was happy to see it, but it wasn't like, I'm with Brian. They should, if they're going to do an unrated version, they should have gone all out crazy. You know what I mean? Smear the kid with the car, do a couple other things or whatever. But it's also, I can see from a business stance why they would do that. I mean, they took out a couple F words, and 10 seconds worth of gore. They added $20-30 million to their budget or their box office. So I can understand where they come at it from that point. And actually, the fact that they made the unrated, it put even more coin in their pocket because it did so well that you throw it out again. People came again.
One of the things I just noticed as far as seeing this opening weekend with a pretty packed crowd is I noticed a lot of nervous laughter during my showing, and my wife watched it with me when I just had a rewatch, and she kind of did the same thing. And I think the horror, instead of the gore concept, is more of we've grown up watching films like this where we know when technology is involved, because we're all aware of Skynet and AI burgeoning and all this other stuff. We know that something is inevitably going to go wrong, and that laughter kind of it kind of hits that balance of, okay, you just responded in a way that I did not program you to, and I'm going to just assume that this is a universe where they don't have Terminator, they don't have Child's Play, they don't have, any movies that have ever come out like that, because something should immediately just say, hey, I didn't program you to say that. Why am I not tossing you into the fire and, taking the ashes and putting them into the nearest vat of acid and just ignoring it? But I get that, she's doing it because she wants to get higher up into the company, and she really wants to promote her doll and everything like that, and the money, exactly like that. So, but that's where a lot of the horror for me comes from, where it's not as gory, especially in that I feel like they could have taken that forest scene so much further. I feel like they could have taken that scene with the next door neighbor a lot further. And, we see the aftermath, kind of what Dan was pointing out, of what the elevator kill. But at the same time, you could have made that a little bit more violent. You could have made it a little bit more bloody. But like I said, I think the horror and the concept itself, and just waiting for the things to go wrong and for that to escalate, replaced a lot of the gore that was missing from it.
I will, just to jump on what Chris said, I'll say, like, that's what got me to stick around with this film. Like, would I have appreciated M3GAN, like, using the kid's face as a dead skin mask and crucifying him in the middle of the forest or whatever? Like, yes, I would have. As somebody that loves these gory movies, that would have just been like, yes, or whatever. But like, yeah, the social commentary stuff, I'm a kid from the 80s, so I don't know if you guys, or if it's still even used, but the term latchkey kid, you know,
Yeah.
like that's what is in my viewing of this film. It was front and center because that's what I was. I would, you know, oftentimes come home from school, hit the video store, go home, make my own dinner, do all that stuff. Like I would just do it on my own, and I was like in middle school, you know. So watching this film, it's like the scariest thing about it is like all that stuff is going on right now. All this AI stuff, all this, you know, one day we're just going to be looking at electric cars. Like all this technology is really ramping up, and we're like dead in the center of it all. And then when you look at films like, you know, Child's Play, they were riffing off of like Teddy Ruxpin and, you know, like My Buddy and all that stuff back then in the 80s. So this is a little bit more like, oh shit, like this might actually happen, right?
I totally see. We'll have a M3GAN in 5 years, no problem.
Oh my god, that's the scary part about it. And like what Chris was saying, like yes, like we've seen movies like The Terminator and stuff like that, and we're still doing all this stuff. You know, there's still no like worry about like, oh, is this going to turn on us or whatever? Because it will. That's the whole point.
Alexa, give me the apocalypse.
Seriously.
I definitely felt like the beginning was a bit of an homage to the Changeling, you know, but without George C. Scott. Flip it around a little bit. I definitely got heavy Terminator 2 vibes, but I mean, and obviously it plays off of, you know, Child's Play, but I think it's all brought itself into its own self, and possibly it set itself up for the easiest sequel of all time. Other than that, I'd say it's enjoyable. I think they did a good job. But all in all, I mean, it's a totally enjoyable film, and I'll see the second one. I'll probably be sitting right next to my nephew. But in all, I'd give it a solid, you know, B. You know what I mean? Welcome to the horror world, M3GAN. You know what I mean?
I liked how they managed to have a lot of fun with the corporate world in terms of the characters that you know get to hang out with. Also, they make fun of certain characters that really deserve to make fun of in that environment. And then there's the scene with the dog, where Katie gets bitten. That really emotionally took me. I mean, her scream there, that was like bam. That was so well done. Very intense, and it made me think of Cub and Whelp. Remember how they set up the dog to be a villain? This was a much better setup. And I do like the fact that in the end, we get an entertaining climax that pretty much tips the hat to Child's Play, the original, by bringing back the Bruce character, of which I think that the movie does a very good job to make you forget about Bruce, the prototype.
Yep.
That's a spoiler there to end on that note. But I didn't see that one coming, and I should have, because I've watched way too many horror movies like this. And the movie made me forget. So well done for the climax there.
Cool. Brian?
I'll only mention this. They kind of messed up with this movie in terms of the title, because they put the 3 where the E is supposed to be. They should have saved that one for the third film or whatever.
Yep. There you go.
Because I did see the announcement where there's going to be a M3GAN 2.0 coming out at some point or whatever. So there's going to be more of these. And I welcome that stuff because it's sort of like it bridges the gap between like, you know, the modern stuff and then the classic stuff. You know, I think, you know, as these films are coming out, they're getting smarter. They're getting made by people that actually know like what they're doing. And you know, there is going to be studio resistance and all that kind of stuff always, ever since like the first days of film or whatever, where this is what's going to make money. Screw what you're thinking or whatever. Like that's always going to be prevalent. But I appreciate films like this that come out and they're fun and they actually mean more stuff. And like the acting, like I forget who plays the aunt or whatever, but we've seen her in previous films, you know, like Get Out and stuff, and she's always playing that. Allison Williams, that's her, that's what her name is, but she's a great actress and she plays that person that you just can't stand or whatever, you know. So like I enjoy films like this that are actually really good. And you know, like, will I watch it again if it's on? Sure. Like it's not going to be something where I'm like immediately shutting off because I think it's awful or whatever. It's a fun film. And it kind of reminds me of what's that other one? Orphan. It reminds me of Orphan, where you have like a younger antagonist, or at that point, like she was older, obviously, but you have that sort of same kind of premise. And then you bring in stuff like bullies and parenting and things like that. You're actually speaking to certain things or whatever that are prevalent in this world, and especially for the scary season, I think it does fit the bill.
Great. All right. Well, thanks so much, everybody. We're going to wrap this up. Looking forward to seeing you all again later on in October. Again, this is Scare-A-Thon 2023. We are benefiting the Women's Reproductive Rights Assistance Project. The link to donate is below in the description. Please make a contribution. And until next time, keep searching, keep exploring, and keep sharing the scare.